Hello everybody, my name is Benjamin Bloom. Welcome back to another video about another Championship manager departing the fine division. We spoke about Tony Pulis only earlier on, the start of the weekend in fact. So check out the video on that. And now Graham Potter has joined Pulis in leaving the Championship, but in a very different way, because for once we're not talking about a manager getting fired, we're talking about a manager from the Championship actually getting a chance with a Premier League team, and an Englishman at that as well. So quite the rarity here. In fact, I can't remember the last one of these that we spoke about. So Potter has gone to join Brighton. Just avoided relegation from the Premier League. I think they were one place above. As you know, if you follow the channel, I don't watch any Premier League, so I don't really have much of a clue. So Graham Potter has had one season down in the Championship at Swansea. He was at Östersund in Sweden and kind of came to prominence when his team met Arsenal in Europe. He's been at Swansea, like I say, one season, joined in the summer and took over a relegated club where it looks like the owners wanted to kind of cushion the fall and use the parachute payments to sort of absorb anything rather than make any kind of gamble on keeping highly paid players there and wages, or bringing anyone in particular in. It was really Ollie McBurney and Bursant Salina, Cameron Carter-Vickers were the sort of bigger signings that came in at the start of the season. And there was pressure on Potter from the word go to get people like Leroy Fer, Wilfred Bonney, Jefferson Montero off the wage bill really, and really transition into a sort of Championship spend over in Wales. So no great ambition like we saw, say, at Stoke, where a whole truckload of money was given to Gary Rowett to spend, or even more at West Brom, where at least players were retained. So you would say Potter had the most tricky job out of all of the teams that came down last season. Swansea started fairly reasonably. I remember a lot of draws, and they were in and around the playoff picture. McBurney doing well right out of the gate, and Dan James, the big find there. We'll see how much longer he's at Swansea, but immediately developed as well. Joe Rodden at the back, and we learned pretty soon that this was really clear, the philosophy of what Potter tried to do at Swansea, right up there with Norwich on all of the possession stats, and particularly the short passing stuff. Grimes and Byers with very, very high sort of passing stats in that central midfield. Carroll as well, before he went off to Aston Villa on loan. I don't think he ever played. So Swansea sort of fair to middling without really ever getting up and challenging, but catching the eye with a lot of performances. Obviously, there was the transfer window in January, which I think if this goes totally the other way, maybe you've got Swansea challenging for the playoffs and Graham Potter not wanting to leave at the end of the season. But in January, there was it was a really bad transfer window. As I already mentioned, Tom Carroll went out to Aston Villa on loan. Montero goes to West Brom. I think Fer was all but done, but didn't go in the end. And Dan James, obviously the famed up at Leeds, fee agreed, Swansea pulling the plug. This all led to a bit of trouble in a game away at Bristol City with the fans, and then Hugh Jenkins, the long-standing chairman, decides to go. So some issues there between ownership and, you know, whoever are the bean counters there and actually making the decisions. There appeared to be somebody in an executive position overruling something a bit embarrassing at the end there, and it did seem quite clear at this point that Swansea very much in a streamlining pattern, hoping that their manager is going to produce a Norwich or Sheffield United-like promotion without really bringing anybody in. We get towards the end of the season, and Swansea were in it up until the end of the season. But they were in it, but never really in it. Derby went there. They had this game in hand for ages and ages, and as Borough slipped out of the playoffs and Derby and Bristol City fought it out for that. There was that game in Wales, just the final week of the season, where had Swansea beaten Derby, things could have gone differently, and they could have actually snuck in there or assisted Bristol City in sneaking in there. How things have changed differently now with Derby contesting the playoff final this weekend. So we get to the end of the season, and I think there'd been possibly a link elsewhere as well. And as soon as the season ends, Houghton is gone immediately, and Potter is tied up pretty quickly afterwards. So that looked possibly like it was already in the works. So Potter keen to go off. As I say, one of the few Championship managers to come in and then not actually be fired and be taken off by a bigger club in the Premier League. Good to see an English manager getting a chance up there. Good to see a Championship manager getting a chance up there. I suspect it'll be a bit of a surprise for some of the Brighton players, given the sort of pragmatic style played by Chris Houghton. But I think Potter's legacy will be fairly strong with Swansea, in that McBurney was developed, Rodden was developed, James was developed, a few players bought in, not a lot of money to spend, wage bill trimmed, squad trimmed, and a philosophy laid. So they really need, I always say in the Championship, if you have 2 years of good planning and doing the same thing, you're ahead of most of the teams. So what Swansea will need to do now is hire somebody in that kind of ilk who wants to continue what Potter's doing for them to have any chance. But we'll see what happens in the transfer market, and indeed whether Swansea players will now be tempted to go off to Brighton and join their ex-manager. So really it's a thumbs up from me for Graham Potter, given that he wasn't massively backed. I know you can give the accusations of maybe a bit of style over substance, and 93% pass completion doesn't actually win you games or necessarily make a good performance. But given what we've seen at Norwich and Sheffield United, I just think that these teams that do stick to a plan and stick to a philosophy, success tends to come after a while, if that's a sound philosophy and it's well practiced. So I would give Potter a big thumbs up. When you look at how Stoke finished the season and what was spent and how Swansea did in 10th place, I think he's left them in quite a good spot, and I'm sure the books are reading fairly well over there. What Swansea do now remains to be seen. We'll see who comes in there, but that has to be guided on well, and hopefully those players I've mentioned that are developed aren't all pilfered away. I know Sheffield United have been long-term fans of Ollie McBurney, and that would be a big saleable asset alongside Dan James, who just seems destined to go now. So let me know what you think in the comments about the rarity of a Championship manager leaving with his head held high and not in disgrace after 7 months or whatever, like most of them do. Do you agree with me that Potter did a good job? What do you see Swansea doing manager-wise next, and how do you see them moving on? Let me know all of those things in the comments. Very interested in people's opinions on that. As we come up to the last real game week of the season, what a great season it's been. I will be at the playoff final on Bank Holiday Monday, and no doubt we will chitter-chatter a bit about that as the week goes on. So any ideas on videos and previews for that, let me know. Thanks for watching. Get your comments in on Mr. Potter and Swansea, and I will see you very soon.